fertilized and it implants. If a fertilized egg implants, it implants into this endometrium, and the endometrium will support it for a while before the placenta is made. Okay? So the glands that you should see here in the secretory phase, they're secreting a lot of glycogen. Think of it that way. They're long, they're secreting a lot of supportive material, supportive components for that fertilized egg. The glands look very kinked, so they should look kind of curved back and forth. And you'll see that, I'm going to take a picture right here. Let me do it this way. Okay, so that's one, and then I'll take it back in here. Now look at how kinked the glands are at that point, right in there. Okay, so those two I'm going to put back to back up on D2L. That's a continuation of the same slide, and that's how long the endometrium becomes in that secretory phase. Sounds good. So you could compare the two together, the proliferative and the secretory. Okay.
Question.
Yes.
How would we be able to differentiate between the strata functionalis and the...
Under the microscope, you do not have to. Yeah, don't worry about it under the microscope. The stratum basalis is just the smallest part that sits closest to the myometrium, and it's always there. It just doesn't change. But yeah, you don't need to know under the microscope. You would see like this part right in here is the basalis, and the rest is the functionalis, and it grows in thickness and then sloughs off. But you won't need to know that for the test. Okay, let's look at the menstrual phase very quickly. So here you're looking at the menstrual phase. Okay, that's probably the best place you're gonna get. This is all myometrium, and this should look relatively familiar, kind of like the endometrium we saw before. This would be the lining of the uterus in here, so this would be like the lumen of the uterus, and this is the endometrium. Notice that really what you're seeing is not a lot, there's not a lot of, I don't know how else to say, like cohesiveness to that endometrium. There's not, you can't follow these big long glands all the way through. They kind of look like they're just breaking down a little bit. They're not as structurally organized. This isn't my favorite menstrual phase that I've seen, picture that I've seen, but I could show you maybe even up here, that's a little better. Myometrium would be down in here. This is endometrium. Notice the glands. They're not very lined at this point. Even up in here, there's not a lot of endothelial lining. It looks like everything's just kind of moving away, which is exactly what happens in the menstrual phase. Okay, the uterine wall, the endometrium, just more or less is going to break into pieces so that it can be shed. All right, so I'll show you that one for menstrual phase. Sound okay for that? Okay. Let's see. If we're looking at the vagina slide, I'm going to go ahead and do these two, so you have them here. Okay, this is the vagina slide. I'll go ahead and snap that picture. To me, this is always a really easy one to identify because it is stratified squamous epithelium. This is great stratified squamous epithelium. If you look at that in a little bit more detail, okay, you've got some good stratified squamous epithelium there. All right. It should look different than the transitional epithelium, which we saw in the urinary system. For one thing, you don't get these huge pockets of transitional epithelium. Usually it's more or less like this thickness all the way through. But the cells at the top don't look very fluffy and dome-shaped. By the time you're out here, they're getting kind of flattened at the surface. Okay? So this is the vagina slide. Do you want this picture or the other picture? This one is better, maybe a little bit. I'm going to go back. What else do we need to know? And that's about it. Okay, so yeah, the vagina, and then you'll see that you have that stratified squamous epithelium, non-keratinized, sitting on a little bit of lamina propria. I'm not even seeing the majority of the lamina propria on this slide, so I'll look for a better slide for this vagina one to put up, okay, for the lamina propria. Sound all right on this one? Okay. The mammary gland slide, there's two of them too, and this is another slide where you need to compare slide 34 and 35 together. mammary glands only become active due to hormones that are produced in the later stages of pregnancy and then post-pregnancy. So you're going to see that there's quite a bit of change in a mammary gland between the time when those hormones are produced and when they're not being produced. Okay? So the first thing we'll look at is an inactive mammary gland. And what you should see is you should see a lot of ducts, okay, of various sizes. These are ducts in here, or this is a little bit of glandular structure in here. You've got some ducts here. This is a duct here. You've got some ducts. So there's some random ducts in this tissue, but there's a lot of connective tissue. A lot of connective tissue you're seeing here. And usually there's a lot of adipose tissue, which I'm not seeing a whole, oh, there you go. There's a big pocket of adipose tissue. So connective tissue, you've got a great duct there. There's a ton of adipose tissue, but there's really not a whole lot of glands. If I kind of scan through here, that looks like a little bit of glandular structure right there, and this looks like a little bit of glandular structure right there, but there's really not a lot of glands, okay? More so you have those various ducts, you have some adipose tissue. I'll take this picture, so this is an inactive mammary gland. And it should look dramatically different than an active mammary gland, which again only happens at the very end of the 3rd trimester of pregnancy and beyond pregnancy. All of this here is glandular tissue. Okay, so the structure of the mammary glands actually change quite a bit, and you're going to build those glands in response to the hormones that are pregnant at the end of pregnancy. So you should see a lot of glandular structure here. You'll see ducts of various sizes. That's a duct, that's a duct, that's a duct. You have your connective tissue, septa, that you're seeing in here. And then you should see some adipose tissue. So let me take this picture if I haven't done so already. Okay. And if I'm looking around adipose tissue, I'm really not seeing a whole lot of adipose tissue. The point being, most of the adipose tissue that's stored in breast tissue is essentially taken away to make room for all of this glandular structure that has to be put into its place. So there becomes very little amount of adipose tissue in an active mammary gland. Mm-hmm.
Is there adipose tissue in the glandular structure?
The glands are different because remember, glands are epithelium. They're just epithelium that dives down in. So there should be some adipose tissue surrounding the glands, but not actually within the gland themselves. So when you're seeing the glands here, those are mostly glandular, and you should see like little pockets of adipose tissue outside of the glandular tissue, which I'm just not seeing a lot of at this point, okay, in this particular slide.
So would it be more the mucus inside of the glandular?
Well, the glands, instead of being mucus, what they're going to secrete is they're going to secrete milk.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a different type of, it's a different type of gland, even in how it produces that secretion. A little bit of a different type of a gland.
The only reason I said it was when I magnified it, it looked like adipose tissue.
There could be adipose tissue kind of like sandwiched in between, but it wouldn't be in the actual gland itself. And most likely what you'd see, and I'm just not seeing it in this slide, you usually see like little pockets of adipose, but they're very small pockets, and then usually be sitting like out in here. So you get like a little pocket of adipose or a little pocket of adipose, usually out in here. Okay, but I'm just not seeing it in this slide.
Yeah, I didn't see it in that one.
Yeah, it could just be that the fact of the matter is the space gets taken up by the glands instead of the adipose. The adipose is taken away during that time. Any questions on this? Did I take this picture? We did. Okay. Sound all right? Okay, I'll post these on